is engineering. For today's topic, we're going to talk about the sponges. When you think of sponges, you probably think about the sponge in your kitchen. Believe it or not, your kitchen sponge may actually have come from a sea sponge. Porifera or sponges are simple animals with no mouth, muscles, heart, or brain. No heart or brain? It seems unimaginable, right? They are sessile, meaning they can't move from a place to another like other animals can. A sponge is an animal that grows in one spot like most plants do. Very few animals eat sponges, so they can live for a very long time. Some types have been found to live over 200 years. So what do they look like? Their body's textures looks very much like the texture of your kitchen sponge. Both your kitchen sponge and a sea sponge get that texture from their pores. Pores are tiny holes in the sponge's body that let water, gases, and food in and out. Sponges are shaped like a tube, with the end stuck to an object like rocks. The open end is called the osculum, and the interior is the spongocoel. Fun fact learners, did you know that our kitchen sponges are actually really designed from the sea sponges? It is not just a coincidence after all. Sponges have three body types: the asconoid, syconoid, and leuconoid. Asconoid and syconoid are vase-like, and leuconoid is shaped kind of like a rock or a lump. So what are sponges made of? Basically, they're called the simplest animals because sponges have only 4 types of cells. 2 noocytes function as the sponge's digestive system. Porocytes make up the pores. Flat epidermal cells line the outside of the sponge and form its skin. Amoebocytes carry out many of the sponge's functions, such as transport of nutrients, secretion of the spicules, and production of the gametes. And that's all of them. No cells for the brain or heart because they don't have any. Fun fact learners, did you know that the tallest sponge can grow as tall as a fridge? And they can live to about 200 years too. Sponges are also considered multicellular colonies. That means they can be placed in a blender and the remaining living cells will just reform themselves into another sponge. If multiple sponges are blended together, each species will recombine independently. Each of the cells that make up its body is independent. That means even when a sponge eats, each cell works on its own to digest the food. So how do they reproduce? Sponges are able to reproduce sexually or asexually. In sexual reproduction, sperm is released from a sponge and floats through the water, where it is taken into a female sponge and internal fertilization occurs. That means even if they're far away from each other, they can still make their babies. Asexual reproduction sponges is through budding, where a small piece of sponge falls off of the main sponge and grows into a new one, also called a gemule. It is a part of a sponge that falls off when they feel that someone wanna harm or eat them, so that they still live even if their main body dies. In other words, they have tremendous regenerating powers. Now let's go to the lifestyle of sponges. Most of them live on the ocean floor. All sponges are carnivorous. Their favorite food are the crabs. When a crab tries to pass across a sponge, the sponge catches them with the help of Velcro-like structure called spicules. They also feed by filtering microorganisms from the water using their pores. They don't usually move and just stay still, but if they do, they can only move about 3 millimeters a day. Sponges also live in quite clear waters because if there are strong waves of water, their pores might get blocked and then they can't eat that away. For us humans, they are not really that useful because we cannot eat them like the fishes. They don't do us any harm either. They can be somehow useful in their own ways, and they're just there being the simplest animal. So learners, now we've learned some interesting stuff about the sponges. That is all for now. I hope you learned something today. Once again, this is Easy Engineering. Have a nice day.
Body is dorsventrally compressed and bilaterally symmetrical. They show moderate cephalization. Their first triploblastic animals produce embryonic mesoderm, a third germinal layer, which contributes to the development of true muscle tissue. They do not possess body cavity between the gut and outer body wall, hence called acoelomates. The space between the gut and body wall is filled with parenchyma, which is mesodermal in origin. Only mouth is present, anus is absent, and gut is a blind sac. Digestive system is totally absent in Acela and tapeworms, but in other flatworms it consists of mouth, pharynx, and blind intestine. Respiratory and circulatory systems are absent. Excretion takes place by flame cells, protonephridia. They are mainly useful for osmoregulation. Nervous system consists of moderately developed brain, nerve cords, forming a ladder-like system. Since organs like ocelli and ciliary receptors occur in turbellarians, they are mostly hermaphrodites. Fertilization is internal. Many types of larval stages like Miracidium, Radia, Cercaria are present. Life history is either simple or complex. Development is direct or indirect. Parthenogenesis and polyembryonic commonly occurs in trematodes. Some tapeworms propagate by endogenous budding. The flatworms are either free-living or ectocommensal, or endocommensal, or parasites.
So here we're going to look at roundworms or nematodes, and we see two pictured right here. We're going to get into a little more detail of what defines these as animals. So starting in general, the evolution of the body cavity is one distinguishing factor. Again, I show some human examples here to help reiterate the point, but remember we are talking about nematodes. This body cavity is a key evolutionary step. This body cavity helps improve animal body design in three main areas: circulation for one, movement for another, and lastly organ function, how organs are able to perform at a very high efficiency level. And that helps through the aid of a circulatory system, which can improve an animal's overall movement. Now, roundworms in that body cavity, if you've been watching these videos in order, talked about initially, you may remember, acoelomates, and they have no body cavity. These are our flatworms. We're progressing up now to our pseudocoelomates that have a body cavity located between the mesoderm and the endoderm. These are our nematodes or nematodes here. We're going to continue with other videos here and other sections, acoelomates, and they have a body cavity that develops entirely within the mesoderm. So these are kind of a great picture here with some similar colorations. This allows you to compare and see some similarities as well as some differences between these different animals here. And again, we're talking about pseudocoelomates here with our roundworms. So within the pseudocoelomate phylum, we have nematodes or nematodes. They're the largest kind of number of species within this phylum. So these are unsegmented, as we can see here, cylindrical worms covered by a flexible cuticle that is molted as they grow. They're animals that molt. Now they're very small. They can live in different environments, particularly soil environments or within plants also. You might be more familiar with these than you actually realize. Sadly, if you're familiar with them, you might be familiar with them in a bad way. Some nematodes are parasitic in humans, cats, dogs, and animals, and this is why they're of economic importance. Heartworm in dog is caused by nematodes, and this is what you can see here. These are all those kind of parasites living inside there. Trichinosis here is an infection caused by nematodes, and it's transmitted to humans who eat undercooked pork. And this is an example of one kind of living inside this muscle tissue here. Again, you might have a dog that might give him some pills to forego heartworm, and you want to avoid this at all costs here. and this is caused by parasitic nematodes. Now, I don't want you to think all of these are bad, because there are some beneficial ones. So there's actually beneficial versions. They can be used to specifically attack pests such as grubs that live in soil that can be difficult to control otherwise. So if you ever know anyone's trying to, have a healthy lawn and get rid of grubs, they may apply pesticides, so those pesticides can kill other insects, can reduce the earthworm population, and just be negative for the environment. Well, adding beneficial nematodes here, and there's different strains, what they do is they seek out and they feed on, they parasitize these grubs. And they multiply within inside the grub. And when the population gets really high, not only does the grub die, but we see all of these other individuals released. And they can go out and find other grubs, and they can kind of do the same thing. And you could take a grass region that would look like this, very chopped up, because these grubs are eating all the roots and destroying the plants. So ideally a nice green fairway or lawn here, purely through the product of these nematodes going through and finding and eating out all of the grubs, so that you don't have any issues with them mass multiplying. Actually, the beneficial nematodes go through, and through the process of degrading the grub and eating the inside, can spread through and help correct a problem without any pesticides needed.
Welcome to Moo Moo Math and Science. What do all these organisms have in common? They're considered arthropods. Arthropods are invertebrates, which means they do not have a spinal cord, which protects the central nervous system. Instead, they have a hard outer covering called an exoskeleton. Think of an exoskeleton like the outer body of a car. The job of the exoskeleton is to give the arthropods support and protection. Arthropods also are composed of segments. For example, an insect has a head, thorax, and abdomen, or 3 body segments. Spiders have 2 body segments, and centipedes have 20 or more segments. Arthropods are famous for their appendages. For example, the legs of a spider, the antennae of wasp. What makes arthropods unique is that the appendages have many joints. These joints allow the arthropod to move, jump, or even fly. Arthropods have bilateral symmetry. They look the same on each side. If you run a line from the top to the bottom of an arthropod, it will look the same on each side. Arthropods have an open circulatory system. An open circulatory system uses cavities called sinuses that move the blood around the body. Closed system circulation, which we have, uses veins and capillaries and arteries in order to move blood throughout the body. Many arthropods carry out metamorphosis, which is the process of transforming from an immature form to an adult in 2 or more distinct stages. Arthropods are everywhere. They are the largest animal phylum. There are over 1 million species of arthropods and a huge variety of tasks. Here are 4 subphyla of arthropods to give you an example of some of these organisms. Myriapoda, which includes centipedes and millipedes. Chelicerata, which include spiders, scorpions, and ticks. Crustacea, which include lobsters, crab, and shrimp. And Hexapoda, which include ants, flies, and grasshoppers. So there we go. If you'd like to know more about arthropods, this playlist will help. And as always, thanks for watching. And Moo Moo Math uploads a new math or science video every day. Please subscribe and share. Welcome to Moo Moo Math and Science. In this video, I'd like to talk about the phylum Echinoderms. Echinoderms belong in the animal kingdom. They are organisms found in the ocean and most of the time on the bottom of the ocean floor. Let's take a look at the 5 main groups of echinoderms. All echinoderms have a radial symmetry, and they usually have 5 or more arms. They don't have a heart, a brain, or even eyes. Their mouth is generally found underneath, and their anus is found on top. They have suction pads on their extremities. Let's take a look at these. Echinoderms do have the ability to move, and they move in various ways. Most are carnivores, and they feed on sponges and other mollusks, but many are scavengers, and some are decomposers. Many echinoderms can regenerate their limbs. And finally, they reproduce both sexually, and some reproduce asexually through fragmentation. Echinoderms, a pretty cool phylum. Thanks for watching, and Moo Moo Math uploads a new math and science video every day. Please subscribe and share.